Welcome to Moral Politics. I'm your host, Bill Wolford. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu recently debunked the official story of the Holocaust. He introduced the Grand Mufti of Palestine as the person responsible for the final solution. Netanyahu absolves Hitler and radically retells the Holocaust. Jewish leaders and Jewish historians went into an uproar. They harshly defend the official narrative of the Holocaust. They criticize as harshly the Prime Minister for his revisionist and troublesome commentary. Still, some Zionists side with the Prime Minister. Dr. Ibrahim Saudi joins me. We search for truth in this glaring war of narrative. It is my honor to welcome to Moral Politics Dr. Ibrahim Saudi. Dr. Saudi is a staunch advocate for history by historians, not politicians. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Bill.
Did Netanyahu muddy forever the Holocaust story?
Netanyahu has done us a favor in a way, actually, because we all understand that Zionists have used the Holocaust to create a new religion. We called it before Holocaustianity. And that religion has a kind of a book that nobody was supposed to touch, and that was the official narrative. So Netanyahu, in a way, actually has given us now the opportunity to open a door, and we need an independent investigation and independent historians to study the Holocaust exactly and tell us what happened and who was responsible for what.
You've seen his speech. It's real clear that he is shifting blame.
We now have a liar politician who is actually trying to do a job of historians. And in the process, actually, he told us that what we have been told over the last 70 years or so might actually not be true completely.
We have some video footage of that speech.
Hitler didn't want to exterminate the Jews at the time. He wanted to expel the Jews. And Haj Amin al-Husseini went to Hitler and said, if you expel them, they'll all come here. So what should I do with them? He asked. You said, burn them.
What's ironic is that as radical a retelling of the Holocaust as that is, it's not the first time he's done it.
He did it before, I think in 2012, where he said exactly the same thing.
It is ironic that there was no outrage in 2012. His speech then was before the Knesset, or the Parliament of Israel, and hardly any uproar to nearly the same thing that was said.
No, but that was like in the house. It was the Knesset, which is the Israeli home, and many people in there are his buddies, and they would actually, in fact, they might be the ones, some of them might be the ones who actually told him about this issue as a good way to shift the blame to the Arab. But the Zionist conference is an international event with many people coming from all over the world. That is the difference between the two cases.
Well, there's another difference. The telling from 2012 to 2015 morphed in a very important way.
The language itself, I think he used the word burn instead of incinerate.
Yeah.
So he tweaked the language a little bit.
Keep this in context for viewers. We are talking about a radical retelling of the Holocaust that has hit the fan.
It's rewriting the history of the Holocaust entirely.
When we look at all the uproar from Knesset members or Israel Parliament members and leading historians, is there any doubt? The Prime Minister of Israel, Bibi Netanyahu, denied the official story of the Holocaust.
Yeah, Bibi Netanyahu now could be said to be a Holocaust denier, because he is actually telling us that all the story that we have been told is basically wrong at its base, because we always knew that it was Hitler and the Nazis that engineered the Holocaust and did it. But now he's telling us, no, it was not their intention to do that. It's the Arab actually who told them to do something like that.
Norman G. Finkelstein has sent out proof to that effect in a recent blog post. And he cited the point 5 of the working definition of Holocaust denial.
Applies perfectly to Bibi Netanyahu. Yeah, so he like if he's in Germany, if he's a German citizen, he should be put on trial now for being a Holocaust denier.
Let me read it. Attempts to blur the responsibility for the establishment of concentration camps and death camps devised and operated by Nazi Germany, by putting blame on other nations or ethnic group. That's what the Mufti of Palestine is, another ethnicity.
Yeah.
It does absolve Hitler and the Nazis largely. I think point 5 working definition of Holocaust denial and distortion applies to Benjamin Netanyahu.
Absolutely. I attended actually an event by Max Blumenthal where a Zionist Jew made exactly the same point that Netanyahu has made. And the response from Max Blumenthal at that time was that saying that is the moral equivalent of a Holocaust denier.
Pressure mounted because Bibi Netanyahu uncharacteristically issued a recantation the very next day. But in Bibi Netanyahu's style, it was a so-so recantation.
He said that he did not mean to absolve Hitler. He just wanted to say that Hitler and Amin al-Husseini share the responsibility together.
He split the difference.
Yeah, which is again actually revising the official history of the Holocaust according to Jewish historians themselves.
Grand Mufti of Palestine. What is a mufti?
The top religious authority in Islam, because there is no something similar to the Pope like in Roman Catholic.
Scholars see this Mufti of Palestine as basically absurd.
The only person from the Arab people, at least famous one, who met Hitler, and there is a photo of them sitting next to each other, was the Grand Mufti. So he actually thought that that's a good idea because now here is the top religious authority of Muslims, of Jerusalem at least, is actually telling Hitler to burn the Jews.
Because Hitler didn't want to.
And you find people like Pamela Giller now and her partner in crime, Robert Spencer, are using that picture in ads on buses in the United States to give people the impression that the Arab or the Muslims and Hitler were buddies and were kind of in bed together, and which is kind of really strange that this is being allowed to happen without enough uproar from the rest of the world that this is just going too far.
Jews were expelled to Palestine from Germany, and that they were not exterminated.
Hitler himself was afraid that the Jews controlled capitalism in Britain and controlled communism in the Soviet Union. So he thought that even this big issue between capitalism and communism is driven by Jews on both sides. And he was afraid, he and the Nazis were afraid that the Jews will have also control in Germany and then they will go through the same problem. He was trying to get some of them out of Germany as much as possible.
I think he had a change of heart.
When the war started, it became kind of a bureaucratical problem now to try to expel people versus like just get rid of them altogether, because we can't just keep people busy taking care of those individuals.
The sourcing is really from a very minor official, an assistant to Eichmann.
Eichmann, yeah.
And Eichmann is important. Why?
Well, because he's supposed to be one of the officers of Hitler that supervised the extermination of the Jews. But in the Nuremberg trials, the deputy of Eichmann, he himself was the one who mentioned some stuff about Amin al-Husseini. And that's all what's there. But actually, Amin al-Husseini himself was not a very popular character between the Arab and the Muslims of Jerusalem itself. He's just a member of one of the 4 big families of Jerusalem, the Arab families.
So you're saying that the sourcing goes to what I understand to be a captain.
A low-level Nazi officer.
An assistant to Eichmann, who was a lieutenant colonel.
He was not like a general
hardly what you'd call an overall planner. But his significance is that they tracked him down, they had a show trial, and they hung him.
Yeah.
The way they go after these 90-year-old
I think
prison guards.
They caught him in Argentina or something, and they had a trial for him in Israel. Yeah.
This bloodbath in the Middle East is very good reason for us to finally look at this debunking of the official story of the Holocaust which itself is a denial of the Holocaust itself. It denies other ethnicities their suffering. It makes all the suffering Jewish.
The Russians lost more to Hitler than the Jews did.
Sheldon Adelson, he is the money bag for all of the fringe, ultra-hawk Zionism. It seems like this Mufti character, this Mufti fable, was kept alive in one of his fronts. Adelson, is, through his Jewish Center for Public Affairs, has supported some authors and some professors that, propound this ludicrous story of the Grand Mufti of Palestine.
9/11 and the war on terrorism is engineered by Zionist Jews. I think actually the Zionist Jews have unleashed now forces using America and other countries in an all-out war against Islam and Muslims. And the Mufti of Palestine and attaching the Arab to Nazis is part of this all-out war against Islam.
This global war on terrorism, it's just part of it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Even though he slipped on a banana peel, it was definitely an overreach to do this, and I don't think there's a way out for it. Can they stuff this in a memory hole?
This issue, like I said, will open the door for historians, not just Jewish historians, but other historians, to really understand the Zionist game in using these narratives in order to shape public opinion to their benefit, regardless of what the historical facts are.
We can't move on without at least citing the dad. Bibi Netanyahu was the good son of a super racist Israeli historian.
Yeah.
Ben Zion Netanyahu.
Netanyahu, yeah.
What can you say about him?
Well, it's really a tragedy that you have now a prime minister speaking for the Jewish state, and then that demagogue politician, he himself is the son of a professional historian, and then he's trying to revise history on his own while giving a speech to some Zionists in one room sitting with him. Well, that tells you exactly how reliable the information that we get from these people is. We should always ask for independent historians who do not have emotional stake in the game or political gains to gain or anything like that to tell us exactly what the facts are.
I like that history by historians.
Historians who have no emotional attachment to the issue.
And that would exclude Benjamin Netanyahu's
Oh,
father,
absolutely,
Ben
absolutely,
Zion.
yeah, because he's a hardcore Zionist who would like to exterminate the Arab.
He said some horrible things. A lot of it never make it into print because it's so horrible. But a lot of what we see, the really brutality visited upon Gaza, it just parallels his vision, cutting off electricity, cutting off food, seizing as much
Exactly.
land.
He promotes genocide against the Arab. And the issue, like I said, of attaching Amin al-Husseini or the Arab people or the Muslims in general to the Nazis is part of this creating an all-out war against Muslims, or making the world public opinion kind of attach the Arab people or the Muslim people to the Nazis.
We've established agenda. I mean, this is ludicrous. Bringing in the Mufti of Palestine is responsible for the Holocaust. Hitler didn't want to do it. Just to keep this global war on terror, burning hot. It was a miscalculation, and I think that hopefully we can seize this miscalculation. Never let it slip into a memory hole. Never let his denial of the denial, fill the airways. We have to just challenge now the Zionist vision, which is built on lies.
Described by the president of France, a former president of France, as liar Netanyahu. But the issue here actually went far beyond being a liar. He has become a lunatic. Yuri Avniri wrote in an article and said actually the Prime Minister of Israel lost his marbles. He became insane.
Or maybe he's just gotten so cocky.
The job of people like you and I is to make sure that this lunatic individual does not get away with anything that he wants.
This blame game permits shunting aside the peace process. And that may be sparking the violence that we're seeing right now that's taken some 94 Palestinian lives and 16 Israeli lives. It looks like the final intifada may be in its forming state.
I think the Zionist Jews who engineered 9/11 and then created this war on terror in order to destroy the big Muslim countries surrounding Israel, I think actually they have opened the gates of hell ultimately on themselves, because the fire that's going on in the Middle East now will not be stopped by a firewall at the border of Syria. No, it's going to spread. And look at now what happened. Israel now is surrounded by ISIS in Syria, by Hezbollah in Lebanon, by Ansar Beit al-Maqdis in Sinai. So they are succeeding very well in creating a circle around themselves that will make their life like hell in the Middle East.
But it's part of that global war on terror. Keep passions high against the Arab.
Israel has never lost a soul in the wars in Iraq or the war in Syria or the wars in Yemen or any of that. It's America that's actually paying by its own blood and money, both blood and money.
One real dangerous scenario encroaches, and that's the Al-Aqsa Mosque. There is a Third Temple movement that's well advanced. It's ignored.
Oh, absolutely.
You got characters like Yehuda Glick, an American Israeli
Rabbi,
leading this
yeah.
cause. They want to basically seize the holiest site in Islam. It was the third holiest site in Islam.
That group that you just mentioned, one of its leaders, has won a lawsuit case in Israel from an Israeli court that they have the right actually to demolish the Al-Aqsa Mosque and rebuild the Third Temple on its location. So the issue actually is very serious, up to the level that, Netanyahu may say that Israel does not have that intention, but he's not talking as a politician. Mm-hmm. And then once you find the politician who agrees with that group of people in the future, he might actually allow them to do this thing that will actually turn 1.6 billion Muslims in the world into people who do not care about anything anymore but to deal with this entity called Israel.
Let's go back to the official Jewish narrative. It's muddied. It doesn't matter really whether it's Hitler or the Mufti. That's not the issue. The issue is that the Prime Minister of Israel, not an ultra hawk versus some hawk. This is the Prime Minister speaking. He basically retold the official narrative, but that official narrative itself was a protected denial. Where are they going to go? What's going to happen? Let's start with the 400 Holocaust movies since World War II.
I heard this same thing from at least two other Jews before I heard it from Netanyahu. So this is not just Netanyahu coming up with something out of his lower end or something. No. This issue is now being spread among ultra-Zionist Jews as something they really believe in. The issue of the 400 movies and all the narrative has done its part already. They have now the museums of the Holocaust all over the world and all that stuff, and they feel now that it's time now to kind of destroy the Muslim world from within, from inside. That's why they are bringing this thing and attaching Muslims to the Nazis.
This segues with what the Goliath author, Max Blumenthal, had to say about the agenda is to finish 48.
Yeah, the agenda is to complete the extermination of the Arab within historic Palestine. That's number one. And then number two, empty as much as possible of the land between the Euphrates and the Nile to create greater Israel. And make sure that even beyond those limits, countries like Iran and Sudan and countries outside those borders are weak enough that they do not form any threat to greater Israel in the future.
Holocaust as unique suffering, denied now by the Prime Minister, is basically the It gave birth to Zionism. Where does Zionism go? Does it just tuck itself into this global war on terrorism and forget the old narrative?
We all know by reading a book like The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine by a Jewish historian named Ilan Papi, he has told us already that all the history that the Zionists have been telling us about the creation of the State of Israel itself is a lie.
So this means that when we look at the official narrative, we can start raising questions about the 6 million magic number. We can look at whether it was even feasible to use gas chambers, or if that would even be Nazi wartime policy to do that when they needed workers.
Netanyahu has opened the door now for real historians to question everything in detail about what really happened during that. In fact, you and I know that there are Jewish people, one of them, for example, is Henry Herskovitz, who is trying to find any scientific evidence that gas chambers in the size and the extent that the Zionist narrative about the Holocaust has been really existed.
Will Granny Haverbeck
Oh,
ever be vindicated?
This German woman who is at the age of 87 or something, had to go serve in prison for, I don't remember if it was 10 months or something like that, because she dared say that actually the Zionist narrative and version of history about the Holocaust, the Nazi Holocaust, is the longest sustained lie that ever exists. She did not deny the Holocaust. She is just saying that the narrative itself, as is told, is just a lie that hasn't been even proved scientifically.
And there's no other instance of history or sacred history protected by law. You can deny God.
Neither you or I are denying that a massacre happened under the Nazis. We are not denying that. But it did not just include only Jews, it included Jews and other ethnicities as well. And also the narrative itself should not be protected by law the way it is, because actually that's not history. History is never closed. You keep the door open for people to come forward, to information to be found.
Physical assaults always are preceded by campaigns against truth and defamation.
Absolutely, yeah.
And lies unchallenged will expand and become self-evident truth, and peace based on lies will crash against the rocks of reality. Of course, he didn't mean any of that, because he's supported by a super efficient propaganda machine.
Interesting to hear liar Netanyahu talking about 10 big lies. It was kind of ironic that this person who is known to be a very big liar, not necessarily a good liar, because he is always exposed, kind of, which good liars actually are good at covering their tracks. And he's talking now about 10 lies that actually are kind of ridiculous. Like, for example, he's talking about how Israel is an oasis of stability in the boiling Middle East. Well, he just doesn't tell us that his fellow Zionists in America, called the Zionist neocons, the Jewish neocons, are behind the design of all that trouble in the Middle East for the sake of Israel. So that's a form of action. Here is a liar, trying to talk about lies by other people, and in the process he creates a lie of his own himself. Yeah.
Uri Avni is the one that said they have a super efficient propaganda machine, and yet you don't have to look far. There's a Hasbara ministry with a Hasbara minister, and Dor Gold, whom we mentioned earlier, is now in the foreign ministry, which is pretty much a similar job, different angle, but a similar kind of crank out the propaganda job. It just never stops.
That was an excellent actually point by Uri Avneri, because he is saying that had it been really the case that the Mufti of Jerusalem was actually behind the Holocaust, well, do you think that Zionist Jews would remain silent until today for Bibi Netanyahu to bring the issue up? They would have made that the official history from the very beginning and justified every criminal act they have done against the Palestinians.
There's one thing that Netanyahu gave us. He said, puncture the lie. Puncture the lie. We have to leave this program, leave our viewers with that caveat, puncture the lie. Now, let's conclude for our viewers, what can they do?
I don't want to call it courage, but that's the word I can come up with now, to actually question the narrative about the Holocaust like any other historic event in history. There should be no such thing as a specific narrative about an event in history that's protected by law, and nobody else is supposed to study it. No. I think I and everybody else now have the right to go and talk to the Jewish people and tell them, well, hey, you have now something called the Jewish state, and then the head of the government of the Jewish state is actually becoming kind of a lunatic liar that's even revising the history that you Zionist Jews have been telling us for 70 years. What exactly is the story? Who's telling the truth now and who's lying? And how do we know that maybe all of you are actually telling us a lie, not really telling us the truth?
But we can conclude that 70 years of bloodletting with no peace in sight is intolerable. We have to demand an end.
Any American person with even a modest amount of intellect should understand now that the Zionist Jews in their movement to build Israel are actually destroying America itself in the process, because it's the Zionist Jews that took America to war in Iraq. They are the ones behind the creation of all this trouble, ISIS and all that stuff.
And almost behind the war with Iran, which would have been disastrous. Maybe the end.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And we're not sure that won't come
We
back.
are not sure that that's over yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting quote from George Orwell. He who controls the past controls the future. He who controls the present controls the past.
Absolutely, yeah.
Dr. Ibrahim Saudi, I want to thank you for a very lively discussion. I hope people get it, that the official narrative of the Jewish Holocaust has been debunked by the Prime Minister, no less, of Israel, Bibi Netanyahu. We want to keep it out of the memory hole. It's up to each viewer to have this discussion and to confront Zionism, which is built on a pack of lies.